Okay, you guys, I am a little depressed after last night's episode of The Following. You guys, it was so good, but the problem is that my favorite follower died last night, and I don't know what to think about that, and it was just crazy, you guys. This is officially, like, this house full of, like, Joe Carroll and his followers is officially, like, the craziest place in America. Could you imagine if you were, like, those people's neighbors? I mean, there was one scene, you guys, where, like, Emma goes to get Joe in the morning, and she's like, everyone's waiting for you, and he comes down the stairs, and there's just all these people standing there, like, looking up. It just reminded me of that scene in The Sound of Music, you know, where the kids sing that, so long, farewell, Auf Wiedersehen, good night. Except there was no singing. There was just crazy people standing there looking up at him, like, waiting for him to tell them what to do, and it was just creepy, and I think that's what makes this show so creepy, is that there's all these people, and it's just, like, you know that they could really do some, like, scary, crazy damage. So, the big news at the FBI is that there's a new guy in town. There's, like, a new lead investigator. His name is Nick Donovan. And basically, you know, like, the FBI is super embarrassed because they have managed to lose Joe Carroll twice now. He's escaped. So this guy is there really to kind of make sure that the mistakes stop. And right off the bat, we get that he does not like Ryan, and he doesn't like the way that Ryan's involved, and he tries to, like, shut him out. But, of course, he really can't, right? Because as soon as he tries to do that, the crazy guy from last week that they captured, David, he won't talk to anybody but Ryan. So, Ryan and Nick go into the interrogation room, and this guy, basically, like, we have a staring contest for a little bit, and then he bites into his hand, like, right? And he's obviously got, like, a cyanide pill, like, embedded into his hand, so he bites into it, and then he starts to, like, convulse, and he, like, kills himself. I mean, it was trippy weird. We also finally met the infamous Roderick in this episode, right? So, there's a scene where Joe and Emma and everybody's at the House of Chandeliers and Crazy, and this police car comes blazing up the driveway with lights blaring, and you're thinking, like, oh my gosh, it's over, they caught him, and out comes this police officer, but it's Roderick. So it turns out that they're living in a town, a small town, in this huge house, and that Roderick is the chief of police in this town. So it's like the perfect place for them. Now we also get to learn a little bit about Roderick, and we get that Roderick is really Joe's first follower. Like, we see this flashback of the two of them meeting, and we also then see this moment where Joe is, like, got this girl, like, strapped down to a table, and Roderick's there, and he's, like, talking to him and telling him, like, first you do this, and then this, and then, I mean, it's like he's teaching him. It's like he's his disciple to some degree. So Joe really wants Claire to be at the house, and you get that that was the plan, and that he really does still love her, that it's not just a matter of him being upset that she was with Ryan, and he's jealous, but he really is still in love with his wife, and he wants her to be there at the house, and she's supposed to be, of course, because Charlie was supposed to bring her. So Roderick comes up with this plan to kidnap one of the FBI guys, right? Because they know that Claire's in protective custody, so they figure they can kidnap one of them and torture them and get them to tell. So you're nervous because you're trying to figure out who it is they're going to kidnap, and in the end, it's Mike. So Mike, who probably has been everyone's #1 suspect for being a follower. I mean, I've suspected him since the beginning. He just has that look to him for some reason. But I guess that this probably puts that to bed, right? Because they take Mike. We see Charlie and Roderick and Louise from last week are there, and they take him to this, like, abandoned warehouse, and they basically try to beat it out of him because they feel like he's the one who knows, and he's just not telling. He's like, look, I don't know, and that's it. The FBI does figure out where he's at, and they show up at the last possible minute, of course. He does get stabbed, Mike does, and I'm thinking, like, somebody's gonna die in this episode. I'm thinking it was gonna be him, right? Because he gets stabbed pretty majorly. They're getting ready to cut his neck when Ryan shows up and starts shooting. And during this scene, you guys, I was so frustrated, right? Because all I'm thinking is, you've got two people from the FBI who have a hunch that this is where Mike is at, and that there are followers with him. Why don't we send backup? Why is it just these two that end up going? I don't get that. I mean, it's like awful FBI work. So they show up, it's just two of them, they start shooting, trying to save Mike. Everybody else runs and gets into the car, and Agent Parker tries to stop them, but she doesn't. And so it's like, they get away, and, you know, we've got Mike, and he's wounded, and he ends up being fine by the end of the episode, right? But not Charlie. Charlie doesn't end up being fine. Because when they get back to the House of Crazy, you know, they tell Joe, like, we weren't able to get the information out of him, and Charlie really takes responsibility for that, which I thought was... I was frustrated by that, right? He already feels responsible because Claire isn't there, because that was his job. And so then, in like just the complete act of craziness, he basically like sacrifices himself. Charlie does. He goes to Joe, he gives him a knife, and he tells him like, basically, I want you to kill me. Like, I've messed up, I've disappointed you, and I want my life to mean something, and it would mean something to me if you were to kill me. Really? Like, really, Charlie, really? So, next thing you know, Louise is putting down the plastic because, you know, I guess all killers ahead of time are thinking, I don't want to have to get blood out of this carpet, so let's go ahead and lay down the plastic for the body to lay on. And then there's just weird, trippy scene where you see Joe, like killing this guy, just, like, stabbing him. And I mean, it was like, for Charlie, it was almost euphoric, but even for the rest of them as they're watching, because Emma's there, and Roderick, and Louise, and even as the three of them are watching, you could see the looks on their faces were just like, they were like, moved, and like, even aroused at some point. I mean, it was just creepy, creepy, creepy weird, you guys, which is, most of the things that happen at this house would be classified as that. So, Charlie's dead, and I am upset, you guys, because Charlie was my favorite follower, and y'all already know that. Throughout this episode, too, Emma is really putting the charm on with Joe. You know, like, you get that, you know, she really kind of, like, worships this man. And she wants to sleep with him. And he tells her at one point, like, I'm married, I love my wife. And he stops her, but by the end of the episode, he gives in. And, you know, the two of them are falling on the bed, like, kissing all over each other. I was sad because there was no Jacob and Paul in this episode, but it looks like, you know, from the previews for next week that we're going to be seeing them next week, it also looks like Emma is trying to get rid of them. Like, they've been calling her to try to figure out what they're supposed to do next, and she's been ignoring them. And I think part of that is because she wants to get rid of them, because she wants to be with Joe. The other kind of cool thing that we find out at the end is that Mike did know where Claire was at, but that he didn't give the information up. That he was the only one out of them that knew, because he has the clearance to know. And, you know, that's really why they chose to kind of kidnap Mike as well, because they figured he was the one that knew. But he wouldn't tell, so I thought that was interesting. And you kind of see this relationship, too, between Mike and Ryan forming, you know, because Ryan is really kind of like this I'm on my own type of character and doesn't, like, connect well with others. So it's cool to kind of see that connection growing between him and Mike, you know, that kind of bond of friendship and partnering together kind of growing. So yeah. Okay guys, that's it for me today. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.